a robust dialogue grounded on the facts, and we can communicate. In fact, we should use the opportunity here to communicate in a better way with Canadians. The facts are, and it's a serious discussion, right? Canadians really are concerned with affordability, and this study is also about accessibility. The study is about both affordability and accessibility. And our commitment, certainly over the last 5 years for Canadians, has been to invest massive amounts of money so that we can deliver better networks, better customer service, and undeniably lower prices. And as I shared in answer to the previous question, the prices have come down. I mean, they are lower than in the US, UK, Australia, France. I gave you the Virgin Plus example on 5G. But also, if you just compare in Canada, just 2019 to 2024 alone, we're offering in some cases 10 times more data for $40 less a month. And that's for a plan, a 6 gig. It's for a plan now. In 2019, we're offering 6 gigs for $90. Now on 5G, we're offering 60 gigs for $50. You can see the massive drop. And I could go, yes. I could give you a wide variety of data buckets, 4G to 5G, and you'll see the prices come down. It's so
thank
clear.
You. And what I'd say is I'm pretty sure I'm out of time here, and Joel's looking at me. I would say to any of the CEOs, if there's any of that information that you're speaking to with regards to price comparisons that the committee can have, I would love to take a look at that data, as long as it's some sort of proprietary competitive stuff that we can't. But it would be great to have that information you're referencing.
Okay, appreciate that. We'll make sure to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. To answer the question, were you going to go to me next, or
yeah,
do
you
skip
can
it, move on?
You can answer, Mr. Entwistle. I'll give you some time.
I think what you're seeing is a massive increase in data consumption. Canadians are amongst the highest data consumers in the world. Canadians consume almost twice as much data as German people, and more than twice as much as Italians. And that is reflective of the fact that wireless provides a tremendous amount of value in people's lives and allows them to manage their lifestyle logistics more efficiently and effectively, and that constitutes significant value for Canadians. I won't repeat the comment on low prices. I would just refer you to the studies done by Stats Canada, the Wall report done for ISED, or what we're seeing out of the OECD. The other element that I think is missing is the cost of devices. This is a part of our service offering where we do not control the economics. At the end of the day, those economics are determined by the device manufacturers, and they represent a significant component of the cost factor for Canadian consumers. And lastly, as it relates to profitability, the comment that the member was making, I would say that's one of our core responsibilities, amongst others, to our stakeholders, but it is key because we recycle those profits into the construction of the world-leading broadband networks that Canadians significantly benefit from. We also recycle those profits into paying down the debt that we've incurred to build those broadband networks, and debt for the industry is up 50%. Those profits return to Canadians in the form of taxes. TELUS has paid over $57 billion in taxes and spectrum remittances during my tenure with the organization. And of course, those profits help subsidize Connecting for Good programs. TELUS as an organization provides underserved Canadians with highly subsidized, low-cost programs that reach 1.1 million people within the country. So there's a symmetry to the profit that I think is important to understand.
Thank you, Mr. Entwistle. We're out of time. I'll just, before I turn it over to Mr. Garon for witnesses, if it's possible, I'd ask you to mute yourself when you're not speaking and unmute yourself when you're called upon, because otherwise we get sound interference and echo. So I'll now turn it over. Je vais passer la parole à Monsieur Garon pour 6 minutes.
Mr. Garon, you have the floor for 6 minutes. Thank you, Chair. And I'd like to begin by apologizing to our witnesses because I'm going to interrupt this just to be able to table a motion, because it's a motion that I tabled about Rio Tinto on the 4th of March. And I hope that we're going to be able to adopt it quite quickly. And this motion deals with what has been happening in Lac-Saint-Jean and Saguenay that could affect many, many jobs in Saguenay. So I'm going to read my motion that my colleagues have received. Given that the Minister of ICID in May 2018 and in June 2021 provided funding for $80 million to Rio Tinto and Alcoa to deploy technology in the industry for carbon neutral production of aluminum, given that the purpose of this motion was to make the industry greener and to maintain thousands of jobs, including in Quebec in the area of Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean, and whereas marketing was supposed to be undertaken as of 2024, but the business recently announced that this technology would only be available in 2030 and there would be cost overruns. And pursuant to Section 182 of the Standing Orders, the committee invite, first of all, Mr. Jérôme Descresses, head of Rio Tinto, and the Minister of Innovation, Science and Industry, Mr. François-Philippe Champagne, 2 hours each, on the feasibility and the timeline for this new technology and any cost overruns that are anticipated and economic impacts. Chair, there are two things that I would like to add for the purposes of context. First of all, this has to do with the future of the industry in Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean. We know how important it is to decarbonize. We know how important this industry is in Saguenay-Lac-Saint-Jean. And we also know that these companies are putting off the use of this technology. And this is causing huge economic shocks in the area. Now, there are platform issues, there are tax issues, yes, but there is one thing that we can all agree on. It is important to decarbonize. It's important to adopt technology that's able to do this. And I think we should therefore quickly adopt this motion that is so important for Quebec.
Monsieur Garon, d'avoir présenté.
Thank you for having brought forward your motion. Mr. Turnbull, you have the floor.
Thank you to Mr. Garon for moving this motion. Certainly, I think it's an important issue to study. I wanted to clarify two quick things. One is that the intention of this motion is not to delay C27, but would follow any work that we have left on C27. That's one. The other, a very small change, which I would like to propose, is just to remove the word each in the last paragraph in the English version, which would suggest that we have 1 2-hour meeting on this. Right now, the way I read it, it looks like it's 2 hours each, which makes it 4 hours as far as I interpret. So if I could just clarify if Mr. Garon would be amenable to those small changes and just the clarification that this is to come after the work on C27, I would certainly be supportive. I think we could probably say that he'd have the support of all the members on this side. Thanks.
I'll just so on that question that Mr. Turnbull, before I turn it over to you, Mr. Massey, I'll just check if there is consensus around the room or not. Otherwise, it's an amendment that's being proposed. Monsieur Garon.
Well, listen, what's important here is that we do not delay C27, but in the short run, that we be able to hear these people. So I'm willing to accept Rio Tinto and the minister for 1 hour each within this same meeting. However, what we could do at the time is assess the need for a second meeting. Obviously, we need to be able to respect the timeline for C27. And what I would like is that we do this as quickly as possible and that we give people time to prepare to come before the committee. So if I've understood you correctly, then there is a consensus. So it will be 1 2-hour meeting, 1 hour with each. Does everyone agree? So on the motion then, as amended, Mr. Massey.
Clarification to make sure, though, that usually the history of this committee has been to introduce motions that don't affect other parties' time during critical interventions like this. So I just want to ensure that I'm not going to lose any of my time at committee today related to this. Otherwise, it's something that is of great concern because the history of this committee has been one that doesn't actually impede members as being able to be involved. So I want to confirm with you that this block motion will not take away from the other time from other members in the committee.
You mean for other studies?
For witnesses today.
For witnesses, well, that depends on the committee. If we deal with this matter quickly, then we can resume questioning, but I can't guarantee that. It depends. But I'm hopeful, Mr. Massé, that you'll have your time as allocated.
Appreciate that, because this is a serious issue, and I want to support the member, but at the same time, not at the expense of me doing the right thing.
Agreed. So are there any other comments on the motion presented by Mr. Gaon? Do we need, as amended, do we need a vote, or do I have consensus? I see we have consensus, so the motion is amended, and Mr. Garon, you still have about 4 minutes. Vous avez 4 minutes pour le reste de votre...
You have 4 minutes left. Thank you very much, Chair. And I'd like to assure my colleague that the purpose was not to take away from his time. I'm new on this committee, and I am taking note of all the committee's traditions here. Now, I'm going to begin with our witnesses from Bell. Under the Canadian system, cell companies own the infrastructure, like towers, for example. And therefore, roaming fees are ideally low, but we need competition amongst these towers in order to have a minimum of competitiveness overall. So what I'd like to know from Bell is this. Why is it that roaming fees are so high? And I'd like a brief answer. Why are they so high? Well, I think that the regulatory framework, thanks to the regulatory framework and thanks to Bell, we have been able to develop competition. And that's why in Canada we have 4 national players that compete with each other, which means that prices have gone down substantially, as has been pointed out since 11 o'clock this morning. And in passing, I would add that in Australia, Finland, Germany, Ireland, South Korea, the United States, they do not have 4 national wireless players. So with your permission, I'd just like to say that we do have sometimes this bad habit of comparing ourselves with other countries. It's not a good habit, but I do appreciate why the major players do that. But let's take Videotron, for example. That's a public company. They've come before us, and they say they try and reduce roaming fees in order to be able to penetrate certain markets, for example, out west. So there are situations now where, and I think this is happening with Bell, where there is an appeal, for example, of arbitration. You said yourself that you have invested massively in infrastructure, and we acknowledge that. What that means is that you have world-class infrastructure. And so it seems to me that the capacity is underused. So it seems that everything is allowed, basically, to so that there aren't other competitors. Well, I'll just repeat that in South Korea, Australia, Germany, we have leaders, and they are leaders, and we are at the top of those leaders. Now, Bell did not appeal an arbitration decision when it came to roaming fees. The CRTC ruled on roaming fees between Bell and Quebecor, and we did not appeal. Thank you. So the big cell companies are an issue. My conservative the conservative member said that mentioned that prices have gone down. It's true that some prices have gone down. It happens in many countries. When technology is adopted, prices should go down. Now, when we receive the Competition Bureau here and the CRTC, we ask them if prices here had gone down more than, say, the countries that you have listed. Now, we aren't doing a very good job when it comes to those prices coming down when we look at our competitors. Now, I understand that competition isn't perfect and there's the regulatory framework. But what I'd like to know is this. Do you feel that over the next few years, there should be an effort to continue reducing these fees, and so that they're actually under the jurisdictions you compare yourself to? Well, as I said in my opening remarks,